So basically what's happened is he's wound up the business, he's emptied the place out, and everything that's come out of the building is in his or Hearts Co., his company's possession. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I owed anybody any money. It's just the type of, I've got a conscience. I just couldn't do it. So better to be known for someone that doesn't produce the game than known for somebody that's done what Damian's done. Then there's plenty of people who've actually paid in full for a Centaur that was promised to be supplied. Clearly that wasn't going to happen.
In the previous episode, we unboxed a couple of Haggis Pinball's customer experiences to kind of give you an idea of the relationship between a failing company and its hopeful customer base. Now, in this episode, I'm going to be talking to Wayne Gillard. He's actually the previous owner of the Bally Williams license, and he sold that to Rick at Planetary Pinball. And you may be asking, oh, why did he do that? Well, he'll tell you in this episode. Now, Wayne has been in the industry for decades. He's got a wealth of knowledge in the industry. And at one point, he tried to bestow some of that knowledge onto Damian. Now, you would think, with the amount of experience and knowledge that Wayne has on this, that Damian would be a willing person to take it in and listen to him. But Damian was set in his ways. He was convinced that the plan he had would work. Obviously, he was wrong. Now, Wayne has all kinds of documentations, and he's done a lot of digging on this whole Haggis debacle. And I'm not going to be talking a lot in this episode because I told him to just tell me everything that he knows at this point in time. And boy, does he. So, by all means, guys, get ready for a lot of information and what's going on or what happened with Haggis Pinball in this episode of Unboxing the Truth.
In this horrible story, I am a tiny slice of it. So many people got so tremendously hurt.
He said that money was going into an escrow account.
How much money do you think that Damian has stolen from you?
He clearly lied, and it can be proven that he's lied, and he's been deceptive and misleading, and all of those things that don't make a good individual. Sorry, what's clear is that Damian owns another company called Hearts Co. Proprietary Limited. That company is basically another separate company that he owns, and basically he has set it up in such a way that that company was technically sharing the space at his warehouse, and that company was financing equipment, and Haggis was paying Hearts Co. Monthly payments or whatever it might happen to be for the payments on leasing all of this equipment and so on. So basically what's happened is he's wound up the business, he's emptied the place out, and everything that's come out of the building is in his or Hearts Co., his company's possession. The liquidators confirmed that there was another entity renting space at the warehouse, and that another entity, he wouldn't say who the other entity was at the warehouse that was renting the space, but it was another entity or person, and that when they were appointed, were told that any equipment that they saw that was there was owned by this other party that was not owned by Haggis Pinball. I've got possession of what's called PPRS paperwork, which is basically when a company owns something that's leased to somebody, they put a property security register against that property so that they own that property, so it can't just be you go broke and it just gets sold off type thing. And there's quite a number of pieces of equipment that I've got a property paperwork on, copies of, that clearly show Hearts Co. Proprietary Limited entering into finance agreements with suppliers for that type of equipment that Haggis was using to produce produce games. Now, I just want to say one thing, and that is I don't have any personal vendetta or anything, bad up until now, obviously, bad to say about Damian or Haggis or the product that they were producing. That wasn't really an issue that I had at the time. The only issue I took offence to was the fact that he said that money was going into an escrow account, and he put that in writing, and clearly that money is not in an escrow account. The other thing was he's taking deposits for games. Now, that in one point isn't the major issue. The issue I had was when he said games will be ready in 3 to 6 weeks, and 15 months later, those games are not ready. And he didn't complete all of the games people have paid for in full. And then he started selling Centaur. Now, apparently, I believe there's 3 Centaur games. All 3, I believe, are in America at the moment. So, one's in possession of Nitro, which claims that he was given that game as compensation for all the games that he previously sold. So I'm not sure whether there's any real clear title on the ownership of that game. One's with the licensee, Planetary Pinball, which obviously is all for the approval process for the Williams owners to approve the licensing, side of, the game's a working game and all the artwork's correct and all that sort of stuff. And one's in the hands of a private collector in America. And I'm not sure when that game ended up in the hands of that private collector or how. And then as far as Fathoms go, I'm led to believe there was about 210 Fathom games, actually either completed or in, final stages of manufacturing, which would have left roughly 40 or 50 Fathoms. This is just the Mermaid, not the normal edition. And out of that 40 or 50 people, it appears that many of them have paid in full. Doesn't look like there's too many that still had just balances to pay. It looked like a lot of them have paid in full. So if that was, I think it's like, American, I think it's $8,000 or something, $8,000 to $10,000. I'm not sure what they were selling them for at the time. But so there's, few $100,000 there. And it seems like there's more damage on the Centaur side, with many distributors taking orders, obviously including Flippin' Out and RS Pinball in Austria, and a number of others have orders and paid deposits to Haggis on behalf of customers, which now have to refund their customers. And then there's plenty of people who have actually paid in full for a Centaur that was promised to be supplied. Clearly that wasn't going to happen.
So, something else to note on this when it comes to how much money and stuff is owed to people. Post this recording, we have documentation basically showing how much money is owed to all the creditors, including the buyers, the depositors, the full paid in full people, and a list of even the distros. So this is going to be just a short little call out, if you will, to those that are owed money. So, for instance, like he says, Flipping Out Pinball, it says here, now I don't know the full accuracy of this. This is going just by the documentation that was released by the liquidators. So, Flipping Out, $60,000. He owes Planetary Pinball for all those parts, $56,000. Business Fuel, don't know what that's about. Don't know, but $146,000 there. Australian Taxation Office, $153,000. Now, this is something interesting also. It has Hartsco and Damian himself are owed right there at about $1 million. $388,000 to Hartsco and $621,000 to Damian. Interesting. RS Pinball, like he mentions, $123,000. Pinball Heaven, I believe that's another distro, that is $21,000. Nitro Pinball, $76,000. And that is just basically a short list, but he owes a lot of money to a good amount of people, guys. I'm seeing a lot of $6,000 here, $2,000 here, $2,000 there, so I'm seeing deposits and some paid in fulls. Obviously, there's $12,000, $30,000. Man. But, yeah. So there's you a short list of just some of the things owed. Sadly, on the listing of creditors right here, it has their full address, so I'm not going to be showing you this document, but yeah.
You know, I realised that you couldn't make games in Australia and it was going to cost too much to manufacture them here in Australia. The labour cost too much, the parts, cheaper to get the parts from America. So unless I want to move to America and build them in America, it made sense to, sell the licence to somebody in the US who do something with the licence rather than just hold on to it over in Australia and remake parts. I mean, we remade nearly 700 parts that weren't previously available any longer. Now we've got, Rick working with a lot of people to have games made, and we've got a number of manufacturers, including Chicago Gaming and so on, who are producing these games under the license that I had. But that's the best thing for pinball, is to get the product out. And if I can't do it in Australia, and I would have been in the same position as Haggis if I'd gone through with making all these medievals and taking everybody's money. A bit different though. Our money went into a trust account, an actual trust account. So nobody lost any money. They all got their money back, or they got a game through us, through Chicago Gaming. So it's a little bit different, but I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I owed anybody any money. It's just the type of, I've got a conscience. I just couldn't do it. So better to be known for someone that doesn't produce the game than known for somebody that's done what Damian's done.
So let me just reiterate here. Wayne could have basically started manufacturing parts and all that stuff because he used to have the Bally-Williams license. He could have. He had the choice to make all the parts and do things and make a business there in Australia, but he knew that it just would not work. And why? Because 80%, if not more, of the market is located on the other parts of the world. So, instead of just holding on to the license or possibly starting up something in Australia and failing, he chose to sell it to Rick at Planetary. And since he knew that it wouldn't work, he tried to tell Damian, this isn't going to work, but he didn't listen.
So, like, the assumption here is that, his intentions were good at first, but COVID was definitely the catalyst for him getting behind and then doing what he started to do. I mean, can you, confirm, since you live there in Australia, that COVID definitely was what caused this? Or, from your
No, it had nothing to do with it. We were working full-time, flat out during COVID. Manufacturing like that, or, supplying product that is already sold, like if someone was buying new pinballs, it was all contactless, quick and collect, and we had a permit. You could come to work and work if you were classed as, retail, essential retail, for example. So I don't think that had anything to do with it. He had the factory for nearly 12 months rent-free because he was complaining that one of his driveways, not both, but one of them hadn't been finished yet. Then he didn't have to pay electrical power bill because the neighbour was building a factory and said, I'll pay your power bill if I can borrow an extension cord to use to, help build the factory next door. And he employed a whole heap of people who were on job seeker, where the government actually subsidises the employment for so many months at very cheap labour. So he had at one point about 26 people working there, working on building games and all that sort of stuff. But the problem with Damian is he really had no idea about pinball when he started, and he really didn't have the skill set to perform what he was doing. Plus, he wouldn't put any of his own money into it at all. Many people said, why don't you just borrow some money against your house or something and and just get these games finished? But no, he won't use anybody's money at all. It's if the customer wants the game, then they've got to pay for it. And if you're not prepared to put your own money up, if you don't have enough faith in your own ability or your own business to put your own money at risk, how do you expect individual customers who are unsecured creditors to fund your business? Well, if you listen to him, he said that he doesn't want to rely on anyone to supply him with parts. He wants to be self-sufficient and manufacture all the parts themselves in-house. That's what he was trying to achieve. and was what he was saying to everybody. But then he says, oh, there's parts delays and there's all these things and prices of parts went up and all this sort of thing. But look, at the end of the day, time kills you when you're manufacturing pinballs. So if he moved into that factory in March of 2021 and he has built, even if you say 200 games, maybe 50 Celts, maybe 250 games in 3 years, that's, it's not many games per week, maybe a couple a week or something like that. And his overheads would far exceed that because the rent he was paying was $92,000 a year plus outgoings, and the outgoings and GST probably $120,000 a year. So, $2,200 or something a week he was paying plus wages to people. His overheads were probably $10,000 a week, and if he's making, $4,000 a game, but he's only building 2 a week, he's behind the 8 ball. A couple of thousand a week, the longer it takes.
Like he just couldn't even pay the overhead, basically. So
no,
he was constantly in the negative.
Yeah, and also I think he expected that people would come forward and order Centaurs, get a whole influx of cash come in, but that just didn't happen. He didn't get his 250 people coming in all sending him $1,500. That just didn't happen because the economy's changed now. With the pie, or what I call the pinball pie, is only so big, and we've currently got 16 manufacturers making pinballs at the moment. So, every one of them is going to be selling less machines than what they were 12 months ago.
That was the major thing, was basically the location then. That was essentially the killer. It was that where he's located, manufacturing is basically just not plausible for pinball.
Well, I mean, if he's making everything in-house himself, as he was saying, and he could produce so many games a week, 10 or 20 games a week, and get them out the door, and the margins he was making, I mean, on paper, it probably sounded okay, but he was hunting for an investor back in January and wanted $500,000 investment to get the business back on track and get games completed and all that sort of stuff. But he wasn't prepared to let anybody come in as a director or take shares in any way, shape or form. So he didn't want to relinquish any control. But he wanted all this money, but says, I'll pay you back and all this, but pay you back how? I mean, if you're going to invest in a pinball business, then you're going to want some type of equity in return. You'd certainly want to be, controlling or signing off on whatever's happening, particularly now we know that his own company, Hearts Co. Proprietary Limited, is directly involved in the Haggis pinball scenario. So he's hiding behind another shelf company, basically, as a director of that company as well, hiding the assets. And you must have planned that from the beginning.
Since he emptied the facility before the liquidators got there, the liquidators can only take control of what's in the facility.
Well, they can only go off what they see and what they're told and what they're instructed by the liquidation. So if there's no equipment there, or if they're told that equipment's owned by another company and that other company can prove that they own that equipment, we made an offer into them on behalf of a group of individuals. There is no assets. So there's nothing tangible that they can sell to anybody. So there's no machines, there's no IP, there's no software, there's no artwork, there's no machinery, there's no parts, there's nothing. There is absolutely nothing pinball related that is part of the assets of Haggis Pinball Proprietary Limited.
I'm having difficulty wrapping my head around some of the decisions that were made. Mainly the silence. I feel like we definitely should have gotten something from him by now.
I know that, when you're working for a company, you have certain individuals that, are not aware of what the fiscal situation is, but I would like to think that, some of these employees, including Marty, would be like, hey, are we profitable? I mean, if we're only putting these machines together, we're only putting out 1 or 2 a week or whatever.
They all said to Damian, we need money. We need an influx of money. We need you to get some money in, to cover that sort of stuff. and he just wouldn't put any of his own money in.
And that was my thing concerned about this last Texas Pinball Festival is that I didn't know at the time if he was going to be there or not, but I was like, man, if he's here, that's at least, for him and Marty, what's it cost to fly from Australia to America? Is like $4,000?
Well, it was business class, so probably 10 grand.
Goodness gracious. And so that's why I was like, man, I hope they don't come because I would rather see that money go into making machines than them having an appearance at a show kind of thing.
And if he says the money's in escrow and it's not, it's just in a bank account and it's not in escrow, then technically he can be personally liable as well as potentially charged with fraud.
What would, in your opinion, be driving him to keep going? If he knew that it was a sinking ship, I mean, why did he feel like he needed to keep it going for over a year longer?
Sure, I really don't know why he kept it going that long, but for him to pull a Houdini and basically walk away and shut it all up with no assets, leaving nobody any assistance at all with parts or getting anything to keep their games repaired or any of that sort of stuff. By doing that really shows the arrogance of that individual. That's all I can say. Is he only cares about himself. He doesn't care about pinball. He never has. It's just a business venture to him.
No, I mean, thanks for the information. I mean, but I can't just say these things unless you have some kind of evidence to also go along with it. Well, yeah.
Along with all that's going on and all the information you have, you've currently got basically a $10,000 award on something. So what's the story behind this?
So I've put a $10,000 bounty basically on the assets. That was to try and locate the assets that were taken from the building. So if some individual knew where they were or where they went or who had them or anything like that, then we'd give them that $10,000 basically, no questions asked. Now it looks like we've managed to locate. Well, when I say locate, we've got some reports as to where some of the assets are. But the problem we have now is that these assets are claimed to be owned by Hearts Co. Proprietary Limited, which is his other company that he's a director of. So he's claiming all those assets all belong to Hearts Co. They don't belong to Haggis Pinball. Well, just an example. Okay, so through Planetary Pinball, they could have got all the flipper mechanisms. They could have got pop bumpers, slingshots. They could have got all of those generic parts to use on the Fathom, and they could have bought them dirt cheap because they would have been tagging on to existing orders of other manufacturers like Chicago Gaming, for example. So if they order 10,000 pop bumper rings, or for example, then what's his name, Damian should have been able to order what he needed through Planetary Pinball at a much cheaper price than he could ever make them himself. But he chose to make everything himself. And just over-engineered everything. All had to be, 316 grade stainless or whatever the case might have been. Sure, it might have looked beautiful having all this stainless steel hardware and side rails and all of these things, but they didn't need to be as pretty as they were. And by making them as pretty as they were, made them expensive and made them too hard to build and cost too much to build as well.
Yeah, that was one of my big features whenever they were first showing off Fathom underneath the hood and stuff like that. I'm like, wow. I was like, that is beautiful. I'm like, why? They don't need to put all this detail and quality stuff underneath the playfield like that. I don't know why they're doing it, but if that's their method and they can make it work and they're making a profit, then okay, cool.
No, I understand. I got you. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks anyways. If anything changes, by all means, reach out to me again. Okay. It's amazing of the kind of feedback I'm getting is because you get certain individuals that supposedly have information, but they don't want to go on the record. They don't want to be recorded. They don't want to be on video. And they don't even want to take the chance of altering their voice or anything. I'm not sure if it's fear or just because they could be just entirely lying. And then you have others that have stated that, you know, they need to talk to their lawyer first. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I get it.
If you had to put a number on it, how much money do you think that Damian has stolen from people?
The rumours I'm hearing is it's in excess of $500,000. Now, when you say stolen, you know,
Yeah,
it's,
I mean, basically didn't uphold his end of it,
yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah, I think obtained money and payments by deception would be a clear way of putting it, because
Yes.
obviously those games are not going to be supplied in the time frame that he's indicated, and he would have known that. He would have known that there was no way.
If Damian could do something to make things as close to right as possible, I mean, what do you think that he could do right now?
He'd pony up the assets, you know, for all the parts, whatever parts there were, whatever drawings there were for the parts, whatever details he has, the source code for the programming of the software, pretty much, you know, everything as far as the IP is concerned. He would pony all of that up and offer that all up to the liquidators, so that the liquidators were then able to see valuable equity in that, be able to sell that asset to whether it be us or whether it be to another individual, so that will enable, you know, people to A, get parts for their machines, and B, potentially get the machine that they paid for in the long term. You know, those assets do not belong to him. Those assets belong to the creditors, the people who put money up front and gave him money in good faith, and he clearly lied, and it can be proven that he's lied, and he's been deceptive and misleading and all of those things that don't make a good individual.
So here's the thing, guys. Haggis was running on lean manufacturing, okay? So with lean manufacturing, you're only ordering parts that you need. You're not going to have a surplus pallet for just in case or anything like that. So chances are there are no assets left. And according to a good source of mine, there are no assets left. They pretty much used up all the parts that they could on the last few machines that they got out of that factory. So don't really know what they're going to do with assets unless they're like digital or something like that. But as far as physical, you're going to get what? Some assembly, some brackets, stuff like that they did? I don't know. Be interesting to see how that goes.
And moved out. But this thing had to have been set up this way from the beginning, meaning for you to have another company and put that other company down as owning the assets and financing equipment to manufacture pinball machines in another company name, while the other company manufactured the games, and had one company taking the heat for all of the for all of the debt, and the other one for all of the assets. You know, you go into that, setting that up like that in the beginning, you know, with the intention that if it did fall over, you know, he's going to walk away pretty well scot-free.
It's a fail-safe.
It's a fail-safe, yeah.
Yeah. So, so it's like he went into it, but he was like, just in case it doesn't go through or that we don't, you know, make it or whatever, then at least I've got this.
Nope.
So we had a major information dump on Pinside last night by a former employee. I've reached out to this individual hoping to be able to speak with him. I would love to, but we'll see if they get a response, if they respond back to my email. I don't know. We'll see.
It's definitely puzzling, and like I said, the more information that comes out, then the more and more intriguing it gets, to where it's like, how deep does this rabbit hole go?
Well, he has assets too. So he has his house in Upway, and he also has a property that was purchased where they were going to subdevelop this product, which is also up in Upway. So they were advertising 4 townhouses to be built on this particular site. And then he had his old factory that he owned, because he sold it back in October 2022 for $585,000. So that asset must have been either in his name or Hearts Co.'s name or something along those lines. So he does have assets that he could have drawn upon to utilise money or funds to keep this side of it all going. So we don't know, and I'm not making any assumptions, but whether or not any money has been directed out of Haggis Pinball into any of these other property investments.
So it seems like, he could have put his own money into the company, but he refused.
Could have.
Yeah.
Could have. He refused. Yep. And you'll find that when you speak to ex-employees, they'll tell you the same thing. We begged him to put money in, and he just wouldn't put any of his own money in.
So it's like he almost didn't have faith in it himself, kind of thing, Or...
Yeah, but you don't put your own money in. You take risks, right, in life.
Yeah.
And if you decide that you want to start up a business tomorrow, making ballpoint pens, right, might not be a great idea, but if that's what you want to do, right, and you believe in that idea, then you'll spend your own money and prototype and do whatever it is to build a game. I mean, I'm sure he did that with Celts. I would have thought he would have spent his own money in the beginning doing Celts.
Yeah. Invested in himself. A lot of the time, especially starting up, you don't typically make any money for the first few years or whatever, because you're taking the money that you're getting and you're reinvesting it to make it even better.
I think if you were going to be starting a pinball business like this, I think what you would do is that you would have a group of people, and they would all put in a couple of $100,000 each, and you might have 5 directors, and you start up the business with $1 million starting with, and that $1 million amount of money is what the equity each shareholder has in that business. None of them are really drawing a wage, you could say, and obviously maybe some of them who are working there, but and that's what you do. So you're using that money that's been put in to set up that company, and that money's owed back to those individuals at some point. And if it runs at a profit, then you can pull some money back out of the company to start paying back money to the investors who set it up. But this money that's come in is, I'm 100% confident in stating that the only reason that he even started this Fathom stuff and licensing these old titles is because nobody wanted Celts, and he couldn't get anywhere or go any further.
Yeah,
he was working out of his factory, doing his Celts machines and took it overseas. And I said to him, "Look, mate, how much does it cost to build 10 of these Celts?" And he said, $6,000 each. I said, well, why don't you go to the bank, get 60 grand and actually build 10 games, they're in boxes, and then take them to Pinball Expo and sell them. People will buy them and take them. Oh, no, I'm not doing that. I said, well, no one's going to buy them on this pre-order window thing.
And I'm guessing 50 people did, because they made 50.
Eventually, yeah. But I mean, I'm sure they were getting built with Fathom money too. But who knows? But look, I'll give him some credit, okay? I heard he used to get in there at 5 o'clock in the morning and work until 9 o'clock at night, right? He used to put in the hours and do whatever it took to build these games. So, these are some positive things I was hearing, right? But how about you start and turn this negative into a positive and do the right thing and relinquish your control over all of these assets that you clearly have, and give them to the liquidator, so that the liquidator can actually do something with them to recover some money on those assets. And then, people will probably leave him alone because he's, but then been seen to sort of at least assist in trying to do the right thing by the community.
Yeah, like, because holding on to him is not going to do him any good. I mean, what's it going to do for him just having it all in storage or whatever, unless he's planning on selling them or something? But
who knows? He
Yeah.
probably thinks, he honestly believes that those assets belong to him, and that he paid for them and he created them, so he owns the rights to them.
So, another day, and another source with information will not allow themselves to be recorded or video or anything like that. They want to stay out of this. So, what this does to me, in my opinion, it's like I want to be able to give all this information to you guys, but try to make it entertaining as well. I don't want it to be just, here's all the information, and it basically just looks or sounds like a damn podcast. I mean, I could do that, but I was really hoping to get more feedback from people that were willing to be recorded. I mean, I could read the emails, I guess, but, you know, it just makes it seem more like it's just one of my regular old videos, and I guess I was expecting more from this. But it looks like, at this point in time, that, I don't know, it's a little disappointing to me, but, I don't know, anything could change in the next 24 hours or whatever, but we're creeping on the point to where at least episode 1, I've got to wrap it up and be done with it, kind of thing. Damn it.
As I say, no issue with the product, right? No
Yep.
issue at all with the product, you know, just the management, you know, I think is where everything let down. Lack of, you know, poor management and, you know, arrogance, poor management, and lack of funds, basically, you know. So we'll see what happens, you know, with what comes out of the liquidation. But, you know, I've been through these liquidations before, meaning I've been owed money by creditors before, and, you know, unfortunately, you generally don't get anything out of it, and the person ends up walking away and then moving on and doing something else.
Just got out of the gym. Got an email. One of the sources that used to work there is willing to talk with me. Good. Just got to work our schedules out, but hopefully we can get this done soon. But I'm super excited that someone that used to work there is willing to talk, because Martin never got back to me, so I don't know when or if we're going to hear from him. Hopefully he comes back to Pinball, but it wouldn't surprise me at this point if he's going to be ducking out for a good while.
The problem with this acrylic is, like, you know, it's super strong for impacts, which is, you know, the hammer test. They were like hitting it with a hammer. It's like, look, it's not doing anything. But it's brittle under pressure.